I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to tell you why that story pisses me off. Admitting that you need help shows that you are weak. That's why I refused. For years, I refused. For years, I stuck by this belief that if I admitted I needed help, I was admitting that I was weak. For years, I pretended I was healthy. I mean, I looked healthy, right? No one looked at me and thought, oh, she has a disease. Maybe they thought she's overweight, but no one looked at me and thought, she's sick. For years, I played down everything. I wanted to be seen as a productive member of society. The thought of not being seen as one scared me. I called things minor. I didn't tell my doctor about these minor things. I didn't think about the future because the future scared me. For years, I refused to go on medication because I didn't want to be seen as weak. I told myself I needed to be strong. I was okay. I was going to be okay. For almost 7 years, I allowed myself to believe that if I couldn't see it, it wasn't there, even though I could feel it. One day I broke. After 2 relapses in a 1-year period, my doctor's nurse brought up long-term medication again. This time I didn't have an excuse not to go on it. This time I couldn't say, but I've been fine for the past however many months, years, because I knew I hadn't been. Because I knew she knew I hadn't been. I drove home to wait to hear from the pharmaceutical company's nurse specialist, and I cried. I cried harder than I did when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 7 years ago. I cried harder than I ever remember crying before. Because this meant I was weak. I was different. I wasn't strong. I wasn't useful to society. It took about a week or so and a lot of reflecting back on things I've learned in the past few years before I realized that that idea was complete and utter bullshit. Before I remembered that everyone is different. Before I remembered that needing help is not a weakness. Before I remembered that just because someone looks okay doesn't mean they are okay. And then I got pissed off. We live in a society where we emphasize the importance of physical and mental health, but we also live in a society where we look down on anyone who does not meet those ideals. We make people feel like shit for something they can't change. We make people feel like they're not contributing members to society, even though everyone is a contributing member to society. We tell people to suck it up if they say they aren't feeling well, without even asking them why, because to us, they look well enough. We live on a campus where people feel embarrassed taking the elevator in Maine because they think they'll be judged for it, because they look well, even though they know that if they take the stairs, it means being in pain. There are people here who take the stairs and the pain over the judgment in other people's eyes. Eventually, I like to think people get over the fear, the embarrassment, but why is it even there in the first place? Why are we living in a society where people feel like they have the right to judge other people? We've all seen in the news and the images that have gone viral on Facebook about people with cystic fibrosis or scoliosis or any number of other impairments who have parked in accessible spots and gotten chewed out by people who think they know what's going on with a person's body, who think that they can tell what a person is able to do based on what they look like. We live in a society where people are forced to declare their illness or disease and impairment to the world in order for certain actions to be deemed acceptable. But we also live in a society that is extremely uncomfortable talking to someone who is open about their illness or disease or impairment. This idea that everyone has to be this perfection of physical and mental ability instills fear in those who know that they don't measure up. I allowed this ideal to impact my life. I allowed this fear of admitting that I wasn't perfect, that I would never be perfect, to affect my health. And that's really fucked up.